Hello, and welcome to the Fargo Theatre. If you're in the room with us tonight, thank you for joining us for our 50th annual Silent Movie Night. You are truly in for a spectacular movie. But before all of that, let us take you on an in-depth tour of some of the history of the Red River Theatre Organ Society, the history of the Fargo Theatre, and an in-depth tour into our mighty Wurlitzer theater pipe organ. On September 15th of 1925, the T.F. Powers and Company began work on the Fargo Theatre, located at 314 West Broadway Street, with a total construction cost of $350,000 or $6,295,000 adjusted for inflation today. After 6 months of construction, the Fargo Theatre would be complete. Finkelstein and Rubin, the owners of the newly constructed theater, called it the finest and most modern playhouse in the entire state of North Dakota. The Fargo Theatre would open its doors to guests for the first time on Monday, March 15th, 1926, with a special program of pictures and shows featuring Chicago organist Ramon Berry at the console of the Fargo Theatre's newly installed two-manual 7-rank Wurlitzer theater pipe organ, which was built into 2 chambers on either side of the auditorium. In July of 1926, the Fargo Theatre was purchased by the American Amusement Company. This also signaled the arrival of new manager Mr. Ed Krauss, who would guide the Fargo Theatre for the next 30 years before his retirement. Ed's wife Hildegard Krauss would also become an important part of the Fargo Theatre's history, as well as a local icon in the Fargo Moorhead entertainment business. Hildegard played the organ for silent films at all of the various theaters in the FM area through this time. Throughout the 1930s, the advent of talking pictures brought about many changes. With vaudeville ending in the 20s, organists were no longer needed to accompany films, and while many organists lost their jobs, Hildegard became the full-time organist for WDAY Radio and continued to broadcast radio programs and play for special events on the Fargo Theatre's Wurlitzer throughout the 30s and 40s, although the organ would begin to be used less and less as time went on. On Easter Sunday, March 28th of 1948, the organ would play for one last time. After this service, the organ was covered and sat in the front left corner of the room, collecting dust and popcorn shells for 25 years. In 1958, Lance E. Johnson, an organist and young organ technician from Sioux Falls, Minnesota, attended a movie at the Fargo Theatre and spotted the organ. Ed Krauss, who was still the manager of the theater at this time, seemed to dislike all things organ. Lance approached Mr. Krauss and asked him if he would be able to purchase the instrument, after which he was told to come and inspect it on Saturday. Upon revisiting the theater, Lance attempted to start the organ, which caused ciphering of several pipes in addition to many smoking electrical components, including the organ's 3-phase blower, all of which caused a very angry Ed to evict an ever so enthusiastic Lance. Following Krauss's retirement, Lance asked each successive theater manager to access the organ, and it seemed that each successive manager was increasingly uninterested and sensitive about the topic. They failed to see any commercial value in the organ, and at one point, an employee told Lance that the organ had been partially damaged and dismantled, which was later found out to be false. Lance asked him for permission to start up the organ, and was once again turned away. On February 8th of 1955, the American Association of Theater Organ Enthusiasts, later to be known as the American Theater Organ Enthusiasts, and now known as the American Theater Organ Society, was organized in Hollywood, California. Local chapters were organized shortly thereafter, and thus so began a revival in the interest of the theater organ art form. The Red River chapter of the American Theater Organ Enthusiasts was organized at Bud's Roller Rink in Moorhead, Minnesota on March 16th of 1965. Immediately after its organization, the Red River chapter of the ATOE began promoting the theater pipe organ and its art form to the Fargo Moorhead community through a series of lectures, concerts, and meetings of the chapter itself. The Barton organ at Bud's Roller Rink in Moorhead was the only theater pipe organ which the chapter had access to at that time, and they utilized it to its full extent. In 1973, the management position at the Fargo Theatre changed once again. Lance Johnson and Dave Knutson, who is another organist and friend of Lance's in the Fargo Moorhead community, took the new manager out to lunch and asked for permission to start up the organ and restore it at no cost to the theater, and the manager agreed. This took place in August of 1973, and the next night, Johnson and Knudsen, among several others, went to the theater after the evening show and began to work on the organ. There were many dead notes, out-of-tune pipes, and a dead three-phase blower motor, and the organ sounded like two cats with their tails tied together, Lance later recalled. Many of the organ pipes were covered in a layer of soot from the old coal-burning furnace at the theater. The Red River chapter members worked long nights from around 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. the next day for several nights to get the Wurlitzer back up and running. On December 22nd of 1973, the Fargo Theatre's Mighty Wurlitzer would be heard to the public once more playing a prologue before Walt Disney's Robin Hood. Ted Larson, the film instructor at MSUM, as well as a Red River chapter member, wanted to have live music for silent films on an authentic theater organ. In turn, the chapter held their first annual silent movie night at the Fargo Theatre on November 4th of 1974. The last seat for the show was sold around 15 minutes before showtime, with hundreds waiting outside. The theater, at the time, seated 925 patrons, which is 200 more than it currently holds. Lance Johnson began playing that evening with That's Entertainment, and he recalls the unexpected enthusiasm from the audience as the first few chords resonated throughout the theater. The community was hooked. Lance played several musical numbers, accompanied a sing-along with slides, then scored Harold Lloyd's The Kid Brother. After the major success of this event, an annual silent movie night would be held every year and is still the flagship event of RRTOS today. In 1983, the lease for the Fargo Theatre expired. A bid had been placed on the building with plans for it to be demolished and the space turned into a parking lot. The Red River chapter was approached and asked if they would be interested in assuming the lease. A special meeting was held in June of 1983, at which the chapter voted and agreed to accept the lease offer, saving the Fargo Theatre from the wrecking ball. Over the years, the organ has undergone numerous changes, including the addition of a 3-manual console and 8 ranks from another Wurlitzer in Sioux Falls, which was completed in 1979, and then was expanded again in 1998 to the larger 4-manual console you see before you today. This also included the addition of 5 more ranks, and it was all built by the Johnson Organ Company in Moorhead, Minnesota. Throughout the past 20 years, ranks have been added here and there as well. As the organ currently sits, there are 4 manuals and 32 ranks of pipes. So join us as we take you into the walls of the Fargo Theatre for a tour of the inner workings, mechanisms, and pipes of the Mighty Wurlitzer Theatre pipe organ. We begin our tour of the Fargo Theatre's Mighty Wurlitzer by descending into the basement where the organ's blowers are housed. If you've ever seen us play here and wondered, where'd the organist go? We have secret passages everywhere. In this chamber, there are 2 large blowers. These supply the wind for the solo and percussion chambers. Fire it up! This next blower supplies the air to the main and orchestral chambers of the instrument. Now that you've seen where the blowers are and how the organ gets its wind, we will now dive into the left side of the organ. This side contains the main chamber, the orchestral chamber, and a room full of something called tremulants, which give the organ its vibrato effect. These things you see above me are called tremulants. There is a mechanism inside of these that will shake the wind that goes to the pipes, giving each note a vibrato effect. Notice here in this demonstration how it works. Now notice the difference as the organist adds the trem. Moving up to the second level on the left side, we have the main chamber. This chamber contains many of the theater organ's foundation ranks, which make up the sound. But what is a rank, you might be asking? Well, a rank is a set of pipes, and each rank makes a different sound and is a complete set of sounds like you would find in an orchestra, beginning with this orchestral oboe. A Lieblich flute, a violin and violin celeste, clarinet, a tuba, a horn diapason, a vox humana, which translates to human voice. If you really stretch your imagination, you might be able to hear someone singing. Another diapason, and a tibia clausa. The last three ranks we showed, the vox, the tibia, and the diapason, were in this organ when it was originally installed in 1926. In the back corner of each chamber, there are also some larger bass notes of the organ. Each chamber is also equipped with a set of shades or shutters, which control how much sound gets out of the chamber. More shades open equals more sound, more shades closed equals less sound. Moving into the orchestral chamber, at the top floor of the left side, we have a set of gambas, this funny sounding reed called a crummet, and a French trumpet. There is also a French horn, however he's feeling rather under the weather and does not work right now. And in the back is the diaphone. With that is all of the pipes on the left side, and now it is down the ladder. The right side of the theater contains the solo and percussion chambers of the instrument. The solo chamber has many of the organ's loud or more unique sounds, and the percussion houses all of the organ's percussion instruments. Beginning in this chamber, we have another vox humana in the front, a larger scale tibia in the middle, a Style D trumpet, the English post horn, which is the loudest stop of the instrument, another set of strings, a brass trumpet, a tuba mirabilis, and a large-scale tuba. This one once belonged to Disney Hall. And the last rank we're going to talk about in here is this funny-looking one called a committee. In the last chamber, we have all of the organ's percussion instruments, from mallets to traps to toys. We have it all. Starting with a chrysoglot, a marimba, cathedral chimes, a glockenspiel, a xylophone, and the untuned percussions like a roll cymbal, a tap cymbal, a ratchet effect, and many different traps and toys on this part back here, known as the toy counter. How many can you pick out? And finally, we have some of the largest pipes in the organ, backstage. We won't play these ones for you because our microphones will not pick them up, but you'll be able to hear them in tonight's movie. Led by the RRTOS unofficial mascot, Rodney the Regulator. We hope that you have enjoyed this trip through the Fargo Theatre's mighty Wurlitzer. We are looking forward to keeping this organ seen, played, and heard for years to come. To learn more about our capital campaign to restore this wonderful instrument, visit rrtos.org. And without any further ado, let's get on with the show. Enjoy Harold Lloyd starring in The Kid Brother with a live score by RRTOS house organist Elliot Sander.